Hey, your Libido Doc, Dr. Diane here, talking about faking it till you're making it with sex. Now, I'm not talking about faking orgasms here. What I'm talking about is how women get aroused. This month has been around novelty. We've talked a lot about how to bring novelty into long-term relationships to create a lot of passion. And one of the things that I want to address is, well, what happens if I don't really feel like it? If we set up to do this novel thing and I don't really feel like it. So I want to delineate between this does not feel intuitively good and healthy for me versus I don't feel like it in the moment. These are very, very different things. We want to always make sure that we are respecting and following our intuition, listening to ourselves. That's super important. I'm not talking about that here. What I'm talking about is that feeling of like, oh, I'm not in the mood, I'm too tired, long day, those kind of things. Because what can happen over time is those kind of things can become a pattern. And the thing of it is, and I talk about this through a lot of my work. I talk about this through the Masterclasses. You can find more on this in the Masterclass information below in the show notes. One of the huge things, though, is the fact that when we are aroused as women, it's not linear. Men go through this excitation and they get aroused and they get turned on, and then it's like very clear climax. Women, if you look at Rosemary Bassan's model, she does such a better job of breaking down the arousal cycle for women, which is much more like, hey, the touch can arouse you, stress can arouse you, stress cannot arouse you, mood, somebody saying something, what's going on in your hormone cycle that month, what's going on in your stress level, how you're feeling. It's like so many things can influence a woman's arousal. And here's what's really interesting. Having sex and the act of foreplay and the act of participating in sex oftentimes is what gets women aroused. So men, where typically that arousal comes first and then they get hard and then they have sex, for women, much of the time that arousal comes later. You start doing the act, you start going into it, and usually somewhere in the middle of it, it's like, huh, this feels great. And there's so many women I talk to that have been kind of in a rut with sex, and all of a sudden they just kind of do it anyways. Again, listen to your body, follow your intuition. But if you're with a good partner, if you're with somebody that's kind and supportive and all those things and is treating you well and is kind to your body, all those wonderful things, it's a useful thing to just kind of going for it anyways. Because oftentimes I hear that when women do, they tell me like, oh gosh, I'm so glad I did that. I almost didn't do that. So sometimes we get aroused when we get into it. So if you're listening to this and you're like, okay, well, I was going to do it last night, but I just wasn't in the mood and I was exhausted. Sometimes it's like we just have to go in there and be like, you know what? I said I'm going to show up this way. I'm really interested in the results of working on my libido. I'm interested in connection. I'm interested in my relationships. I'm interested in all the benefits that secreting oxytocin does, from connection to stress response and resiliency to sleep to anti-aging, all these amazing, yummy things, right? To happiness. So I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to do this because I know it's part of my healthcare plan. And a lot of times women will report in particular that, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I did that. That's, it's not gender specific, but most of the time it's more commonly that I hear that from women that will say, oh gosh, I'm so, so glad I did that, right? So that's really important to understand. And so when you're exploring this novelty and you're trying this stuff out, just keep that in mind that, hey, we want to, in order to come back into relationship, we have to sometimes go for it when we might be tired anyways. And there's also something to be said about scheduling sex dates in the afternoon right before dinner if you can manage that, because especially as we age, it can be very, very wonderful to have sex dates when you're not tired and when it's not 9, 10, or even 8 o'clock at night. All right, everybody, hope that helped. Please do subscribe to continue to get the updates of what I am releasing to support you all. And please do share this with your friends. Don't keep me a secret. See you in the next video.